Okay, so how many of you here have ever gone through a really hard season of your life where you felt like you were by yourself and there was no one there to help you? Anyone? Yeah. So the title of my sermon is Even in the Darkest Valley. And I just kind of want to share a personal story of a really hard time in my life where at first my life was going great. I felt like I was on the mountaintop, and then 2 seconds later I was down in this valley and I felt like I was all by myself and I was really confused. So it was the summer of 2018, and I had just finished my missions internship in Bangkok, Thailand, and it wasn't the easiest summer, but it was so great. I was able to be in a international church with these missionaries, and I just learned so much, and that's what I feel the Lord's calling me to do, is be a missionary. And so it was just amazing to learn from them and to be in that culture for 2 months. So I came back after the summer of growth and learning, and on my way back to the States, I noticed I was kind of getting a little sick, and I figured, oh, it's just traveling, being in a different country. But my first layover, I was walking around in a city, and I started getting like a fever and a sore throat and dry mouth, and I was like, something isn't right. But I was around people who were sick in Thailand, so I figured I was probably getting something that they had. So I get home, I'm so happy to be back, getting ready for Leadership Week here at SEU. I was going to be an RA, so I was really excited to come be with my team and to just go through that whole process. A week later, I took my sisters on a really quick trip to DC, and I knew on the way back that something wasn't right. I got a really bad fever, I had a horrible headache, and I had about a 5-hour drive, so we got back to North Carolina. And it got to the point where I couldn't turn my neck anymore. And I'm driving, and I'm trying not to scare my sisters because they couldn't drive, they didn't have a license, and there was no one else who could drive us all the way back to North Carolina from DC. So I looked at my sister and I said, hey, I can't turn my neck, so can you please look every time I need to get into a different lane? I couldn't turn it any more than this. And I was like, this isn't okay. So of course I called my parents, and I'm trying not to get scared on the phone. I'm like, I think something's wrong, but I'm not sure like what it could possibly be. So I get home, and my parents just came home from their life group, and I remember laying on my bed, and of course I did what everyone should not do. I go on Google, type in my symptoms, and even though if, like, you ever have a sore throat and you're like, sore throat, runny nose, oh, I have 2 days to live. So I just remember searching on my phone, and the first thing that popped up was meningitis. I was like, no way. There's no way that Google is actually right with my symptoms, and this is what's wrong with me. So I self-diagnosed myself, but then I had to kind of talk myself out of it. And Mom was like, we'll see what happens. We'll give it a couple days, and if you're not feeling better, we'll go to the ER. I'm like, okay, fine. The next morning, it was 10 times worse. I couldn't move my neck at all. My eyes, like just any sort of light, my eyes were not able to I can't keep them open. Any noise was really bad for my head, and I have 2 little brothers, so of course they're running around, screaming, laying downstairs in the family room. I'm like, please be quiet. I had a pillow over my head, laying on the recliner, and so my mom's like, okay, we're gonna take you to the ER. I go to the ER, they're like, oh, it's just the flu. It's just a branch of the flu. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So they give me medicine, I go home. 2 days later, the symptoms are getting worse. I can barely keep my eyes open. I start shaking. We go to the hospital again. They're like, we're not sure what this is. We think it's the flu. We can do a spinal tap. We don't think you need one, but we can do one. I was like, it's like, no, I won't take a spinal tap. That's not something I need. And then it got to the point where I was just constantly shaking. I could not focus. My parents knew something was really wrong, and the doctors kept saying it was the flu, but this is not normal for someone with the flu. And so I go into the ER one last time, and a different doctor comes in, and he's like, we need to do a spinal tap on you. And I'm like, that's the last thing I would want, putting a needle in my spine. But at this point, I was so desperate that they did a spinal tap, and as soon as they finished, the pressure was like relieved from my head, and I was like, oh, that was it. I just had like a buildup of fluid. I'm fine, I can go home. So an hour later, the doctor comes in, and I see his face, and he's not smiling like I assumed he would be. And I was like, this isn't good. And he said, so we looked at your results, and you have an elevated white blood cell count in your spinal fluid. And after that, it was like a scene in the movie. I looked at my dad, and I was like, this isn't real. Like, I'm fine. I can go home. I have to get ready for leadership week. I'm about to drive to Florida. Nothing's going to stop me. I just had a great summer. The Lord just used me to work in this international church, and I had such a great time of ministry. There's no way that this is happening to me right now. And so he's like, so we're going to have to hospitalize you for a few days. You're going to have to stay here. And at that moment, I remember being so irritated. I was like, Lord, why is this happening to me right now? Of all times, when I'm about to go into my senior year, this is supposed to be one of the best times of my life, and I'm hospitalized. And so I was in the hospital for a few days, and the pain was off and on. And I just remember being mad. Not necessarily at God, but that something like this would happen to me. Yeah. And I was just so confused, and the pain was just constantly back and forth. And I remember my last night in the hospital, I told my mom, don't worry, I'll be fine, I'm feeling a lot better. Just go home, rest, don't sleep on this couch anymore, just go home. And that was the worst night out of all the nights. And it's a good thing that they hospitalized me, because he said, you were really close to having bacterial meningitis if you would have waited just 1 or 2 more days, and that's deadly. And so that last night, I just remember sobbing in the hospital bed. Lord, why is this happening to me? Why do I have to go through this pain? And he just slowly started reminding me of the conversations I was having with the nurses and the doctors. Oh, what did you do this summer? Oh, I was interning in Thailand. Oh, why? I want to be a missionary, and I was doing this internship so I can graduate. Oh, so where did you go to school? And each conversation, I noticed that I was able to speak about Jesus and bring the Lord into their lives, because some of them, you can tell that they don't know anything about the Lord, and they were really intrigued about why I was in Thailand and about my life. And so when I finally left the hospital, I was able to process everything that happened to me and just look back, and I just saw that God had his hand over me at all times, even when I felt lonely and confused and a little mad. So that kind of ties into my message about walking in the darkest valley. And so there's 3 points that I just want to share that the Lord really spoke to me as I was preparing this message. And the first one is that in the hardest time, God brings comfort to us. And so we see in Psalm 23:4, it says, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you're with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And as I was looking back, I remember having this sense of overwhelming peace over me, and just knowing that the Lord was there even when I was in that hospital room by myself, that he was comforting me. And in Matthew Henry's commentary, he was just saying that many of David's psalms are of complaints, but in this one, it is full of comfort and the expression of delight in God's great goodness and dependence on him. And so that was just so encouraging for believers, so that we know that the Lord will bring us comfort even in our times of need, when we feel alone and we feel like God is not by our side, but he's always there. The second point is, life is not always going to be easy, but with Jesus we have peace. And we see in John 16:33, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And we see in this passage that Jesus is telling the disciples before he leaves, he's like, this life isn't going to be easy, so I'm telling you now to just take heart. I have overcome the world, and you will go through struggles, but I will bring you peace, a peace that surpasses all human understanding. And so in that moment, I had so much stress and worry and doubt. And of course, the only thing on my mind was getting to leadership week. And my resident director was like, Keila, get better, and then worry about leadership week. This is not important. You need to get better. Your health is more important. But I was letting this anxiety of, oh my goodness, I'm going to miss out on something that I have been looking forward to for a long time. But the Lord just kept reminding me, have peace. I am here with you. There's a purpose for your pain. And so my third point is that even in the hills and valleys, God is watching over us. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Torrin Wells. So he has this song called Hills and Valleys, and he actually based the song off of Psalm 121. So I'm just going to read Psalm 121. I lift my eyes up to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He watches over you, will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. So in these moments where we feel unseen and unnoticed, and we're filled with so much doubt, we need to know that God always sees us, and he has his hand over us even when we're walking through those dark valleys and we just feel so far from him. So the main point of my message is that even in the darkest valleys and the hardest seasons, God is always there with us, and he's always faithful. And I know that some of us have probably gone through really hard seasons, or someone in this room might be going through one right now. So I just want to encourage you that the Lord is always there, and you don't have to doubt that he will never leave you. So even through our highs and our lows, he's bringing us through this to shape us into the men and women that he has called us to be. And through these trials and tribulations, our faith will grow, and we can depend on the Lord more. Thank you.
All right.